Viewers, welcome to Elimu TV, the program that we call The World. Today, we are very lucky to have High Commissioner of Botswana, John Moretti, and he's going to tell us more about his country. John, tell us about yourself.
I'm John Moretti, as you have pointed out, the High Commissioner of the Republic of Botswana to Kenya. I started my work here in Kenya in February 2013. So I've been in Kenya for 4 years, representing the Republic of Botswana to promote the excellent friendly relations that exist between our two countries.
That's great. How did you get to become a High Commissioner? What does it entail? Training? Or in your country, is a High Commissioner just appointed as a political appointee? How is it done in your country?
There is a career path which starts at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where you join as a trainee, usually from the university. There is no, if you like, established special discipline, but once you have studied economics, political science, accounts, and others, a combination of those prepares one at least to appreciate what it requires to get into the entry program. You apply because it's a very competitive area. Botswana does not have many diplomatic missions, and therefore the field is rather compressed. So we had to apply, we had to be considered, we had to be vetted, but at the end of the day, it's about the passion you have for international relations and how you, if you like, behave and if you like, fare in the structures of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to end up being an ambassador. You get appointed by the President of the Republic. Usually it's the career diplomats that have gone through that system, but occasionally the President, in his wisdom, as is the case in other countries, can pick somebody who has not gone through the type of training that foreign affairs officers go through. So you have to have a passion for international relations, a passion to network, get to know the world, and most importantly, represent your country at a very high level, because as the High Commissioner or Ambassador, you are actually the representative of your head of state. So it's a very onerous responsibility.
Oh, great. As a person being in Kenya, you've traveled to different places. What are some of the areas that you have found very interesting in our country?
Kenya itself, it's a very diverse country. It is actually the size of Botswana, almost geographical size. But the population of Kenya being about 44 million plus as we speak, and the population of Botswana being just under 2.3 million, it's a vast difference. Here you have lots of people, lots of tribal groupings, lots of diverse cultures. I have visited not the whole country, but where I have been, what I have picked is the diversity, the sheer diversity of this country. But one thing is constant, the welcoming nature of the people. I think it is African to welcome, and therefore what I've seen in Kenya is very welcoming people. And it is not the first time really I had interacted with Kenyans, because we had Kenyan expatriates in Botswana over many years. I've been to Kisumu County. Of course, I had tilapia by the lakeside. That was one of my favorites. I've been to Masai Mara. The game drives are wonderful, including the bush dinners. Masai Mara, special for Kenya, but I did not go during the migration. I hope to go at some point when there is the migration. I have been to Tsavo West National Park. I have been to Nyeri. Unfortunately, we have a sister relationship between Nyeri County and a jurisdiction in Botswana. Nyeri, Baringo, I've been to those areas. Very high production areas in terms of food. That's what I picked. But I've been to Laikipia County. Comparison to Botswana is the cattle there. They are very highly ambitious society when it comes to cattle. So what I have seen in Kenya, everywhere I've traveled, there is similarity with Botswana, right across. The cultures, including the way they express themselves when they are happy. And what we don't have in Botswana are the beaches, because I recently went to Malindi and experienced the nice coastal waters and resorts. Because we are a landlocked country, that's where we differ with Kenya. But everything else is similar.
Can you be able to speak Kiswahili?
I have a basic understanding picked from interactions with people. Okay. So najifundisha Kiswahili pole pole.
Oh, that is great. Actually, that's not kidogo. Unajua Kiswahili. Any other word you know in Kiswahili?
Asante, karibu sana, furahia chakula, mtoto, mrembo, wazee, mzee. Pale. Pale is almost like Botswana. When we say there, we say fale in our country. Here you say pale. So there are similarities. Yes.
Now, coming to your country, just take us through your history of the country, the climate, the trade. Just take us through. Somebody wanting to know Botswana, where it's situated, would like to have all that information if you can.
Mm-hmm. Botswana is at the heart of Southern Africa. When you talk of Southern Africa, it's down south. Now, being at the heart of Southern Africa, for you to situate it properly, north of Botswana is Zambia. Northeast of Botswana is Zimbabwe. These are the countries that share the border with Botswana. Northwest of Botswana is Namibia. The southern part of Botswana is South Africa. So Botswana is at the center of all these countries. And it's a very small, landlocked country. But when I say small, I speak in terms of population. But the geographical size, as I said, is huge. It's about 581,740 square kilometers, almost the same size as Kenya. This country used to be called Bechuanaland Protectorate during the colonial times, when it was presided over by the British. It was not the colony in the classical sense of people coming to look for treasures and driving away communities and getting fertile land like was the case here in Kenya. We asked for protection because Botswana, or the Botswana chiefdoms that were residing in this, scattered in this very dry land. It's a semi-arid climate country. Almost, I think more than 60% is covered by desert. But when I say desert, it's not like sand all the way and no vegetation. It is shrub savanna. Some of it looks exactly like what you see in the Tsavo area. That is the desert kind of conditions we talk about when we say Botswana. But when you get closer to the borders with Namibia, that's where you see the typical sand dunes, where you find communities like the Basarwa, or some people call them the San, some refer to them as Bushmen. So this is Botswana, the physical Botswana. It attained independence in 1966, 3 years after Kenya. So we are 50 years old. That is why we have the poster behind you, where we were celebrating our 50th anniversary. And we have learned quite a bit from the way Kenya does things, particularly in the 70s and 80s. And a lot of our institutional establishments were set up after benchmarking with countries like Kenya. Our mainstay of the economy over many years has been, we are a mineral-led economy, let me put it this way. because in 1972, we opened the first diamond mine in the central part of Botswana called Orapa town, and that's when we began exporting raw diamonds. Then in 1975, we opened the second kimberlite mine, which is the world's largest kimberlite pipe to date. The most valuable diamonds in the world come from Botswana. In other words, by value, Botswana is the biggest diamond producer in the world. And the most valuable come from this mine that was opened in 1975. 1982, we opened another diamond pipeline near Orapa, the first mine in Letlhakane. So our economy was driven by the revenue derived from diamond sales. We also had copper and nickel in another town called Silebepikwe, also towards the central part of Botswana. Other than that, we are a arable pastoralist people, and we have been exporting beef. There's a saying, and it's true, I think even to date, there's still more cattle than people in Botswana. Because the Commonwealth Development Corporation, CDC, gave us technical assistance and resources to set up our abattoir in 1965, actually a year before independence. We had the first modern state-of-the-art abattoir and had access to the European markets. To date, we still have. We learned quite a bit about that aspect of animal husbandry and meat processing and production from Kenya. In fact, some of the first meat inspectors in Botswana were trained here. Some of the first livestock advisors and vet medical doctors, veterinary doctors, they were trained here. So it's diamonds and beef that principally have been at the heart of Botswana's exports to earn revenue that was plowed back into infrastructure, into education, into health. But we also bake in tourism. It is actually one of the biggest sectors. It has overtaken agriculture because we have the big fives like you. We have safari tourism. We have the famous Okavango Delta. Anybody wishing to visit Botswana would have heard of the Okavango Delta, which is one of the World Heritage Sites, declared a heritage site only 2 years ago. It is the biggest inland water delta in the world. So tourists from everywhere, whether it's Europe, whether it's Asia, whether it's Latin America, don't want to go to Botswana and not visit the Okavango Delta. We have invested a lot in the education of our people because, at independence, we had only less than 100 people who had degrees, and they had to be trained to take over the administration structures of the country. And a lot of them were trained here, some were trained in other countries abroad. So human capital, mining, tourism, we're trying to get seriously into the other financial services, other service sectors, because it's a small economy. We cannot just depend on minerals. As you know, the commodity prices worldwide, when they dive, it means we don't get enough revenue. So we are currently focused on diversifying the economy into other growth areas. That is why we have education and innovation at the heart of the focus that should see Botswana transforming into a knowledge economy and giving opportunity to our youth to be global entrepreneurs rather than people who just work and look for employment or go to school to train as employees. We're trying to train the skills relevant for the needs of the future economy, the current economy, and of course the future economy. That is Botswana in a nutshell. We enjoy fantastic relations with Kenya, as I say, and we continue to work on those to grow into various areas. We have had lots of exchanges. Every week you see people going to Botswana, you see ICT experts, financial experts. So we have lots of services being traded between the two countries, particularly from here to Botswana. We also, of course, do a bit of our exchanges from Botswana to this side. We are the least corrupt country in Africa. I think that I need to put across. For 21 years, Botswana has been rated by Transparency International as the least corrupt country in Africa. We operate an open economy. Our governing system is a parliamentary system. The only difference with Kenya, they actually say almost the same as Kenya. You only brought a bit of difference with the 2010 constitution. Otherwise, what Kenya was before the 2010 constitution, which introduced the county governments, and Botswana was exactly like that. So it's a Westminster parliamentary system of government. Elections held every 5 years. First past the post system. Winner takes it all. Winner takes it all. That's what we call it. Simple majority in every constituency. We will have our next elections in 2019. The presidents serve for 2 terms and they're out. There are roughly 4 political parties in Botswana. There are not many. Sometimes we have smaller parties mushrooming, but then they coalesce or get absorbed into the bigger parties closer to the elections. Our people are passionate about dance, about their food, about the general culture. We just love our country. Hence, you will see somewhere a strapline says, Botswana, our pride, your destination. It's part of our branding that tries to ensure that when you come to Botswana, you see Botswana from the people. The first person you meet from Botswana, the way they talk about the country, the way they represent, the way they interact with you, you should see Botswana immediately. There's so much I can say about Botswana.
The last time I visited you, I saw a system on of the chiefs. There's a poster which shows the system of chiefs, which appear to be very, very important. Can you shed some light about that?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, the chiefs, before we build a nation, before we build what is now the nation state of Botswana, it was just scattered communities, tribal groups who were ruled by chiefs. And the most powerful of these chiefs were called paramount chiefs. The paramount chief maybe would be controlling a particular area with several tribes and him being recognized as a senior. So we had these chiefs all over Botswana. Our history owes, and our independence owes much to the wisdom of the 3 chiefs who went to the United Kingdom, I think in the 1880s, to meet with Queen Victoria. They went across Britain to just talk to the communities and the British people about the threat that Bechuanaland, the communities in Botswana, faced when the then Afrikaners, whom we call the Boers in South Africa, were fighting the British, and others were being pushed into the interior of Southern Africa. So they were coming to drive these African communities out of their lands. At that time, Bechuanaland was being threatened to be absorbed as part of a province of South Africa. So we could, had it not been for these chiefs, we could have become a Bantustan. South Africa was, when it was apartheid South Africa, the African communities were confined to their little areas, and they were called Bantustan, and they were undeveloped, whilst the Mzungus occupied the fertile part of South Africa. So Botswana was threatening to be engulfed, absorbed to become a Bantustan. So these chiefs went to Britain and asked for protection. And it worked because a man called Cecil John Rhodes, who was a British imperialist, wanted to build a railway line from Cape to Cairo. And it went through Botswana. So for his interest to be protected, Botswana had to be protected by Britain. And therefore, if his interests were not protected, it means Botswana would have been part of South Africa. So they had a balance, and therefore our chiefs won the day at the end of the day. And Botswana was protected right down until 1964 when we started negotiating for independence. And our negotiations did not take long because in any case, they did not know there were diamonds. They did not know any of these treasures that were there in Botswana. All they had helped us establish was the one abattoir. In any case, it was a very dry, arid area, difficult to administer from anywhere. So the administrative costs were very minimal. And therefore, they were only too happy to say, you can have it. That is why one of the second president of the Republic of Botswana, Sekou Masire, in his memoirs, he entitled them Very Brave or Very Foolish. That is the title of his book. This is when they were asking, he's actually quoting the response of the British when they were asking them, can we have self-rule? And they looked at them, and I think I'm told one British guy said, these Africans are either very brave or very foolish. How can they want independence when we're actually giving them money for their annual budget? What do they have that can make them independent? But the rest is history.
Yeah. Okay. Now, between Kenya and Botswana, how is the trade? What are the area that we trade together? How is the balance? Is the trade more in favor of Kenya or the other way around? Can shed also some light on that?
I must say the trade is less than should be the case because we need to be doing more. I also need to point out that part of the limitations to free trade has been the trading blocks existing in the two regions. You have East African Cooperation here, which is a trading bloc with its own arrangements and external tariffs that protect trade within this region. To that extent, you'll find that whilst there's a lot that can be traded between the two countries, the volume is quite low. In the last 4 years, what we have seen is fluctuation. 1 year, you will have more, in terms of value, more exports from Kenya to Botswana, then the following year is the other way around. What have we been exporting to Kenya ourselves? From what we have seen, there was a time we were exporting electronic components for vehicles to Kenya. We have been exporting to Kenya fuel and fuel-related components for motor vehicles. Those are the key exports from Botswana. There was even building materials. I think some companies still exported some building materials to Kenya. Not the timber, because we don't have timber in that region, but usually the iron building material and fencing materials. Yes. From Kenya to Botswana, we have seen apparel lately. These, what is this Kenyan cloth called? Not gitenges. I've seen quite a number of markets. If you go to every major shopping mall in Botswana, you'll find a stall outside. There are these cultural products, including gitenges from Kenya. We have food products, a few horticultural products, but some mostly grains. These have been the dominant, exports to Botswana. But I also want to mention that in terms of, we're talking about goods, there are also services. I just mentioned that some of the financial institutions in Botswana import expertise from Kenya. So you'll find people getting on the plane to go and spend a week doing the servicing or infrastructure development of a particular facility in the ICT sector. We are seeing now a lot of interest from the insurance companies in Botswana that want to come and set up in Kenya. We have seen We have a financial services giant, the biggest microfinance institution in Botswana by market capitalization on the stock exchange, has invested in Kenya since 2011 or 2007. And they have about 21 branches. Their name is Let's Hill. They are bringing quite a bit because they've employed a lot of Kenyans. The biggest supermarket chain group in Botswana called Choppies has also entered Kenya, and they have bought 10 stores in Nakuru, Nairobi, and Kisumu. So when you see the supermarket called Choppies, know that that's a Botswana brand. So these are telling indicators of the growing business relations between the two countries. We hope that we will trade more so that recently we signed an MOU on trade, which was signed by the ministers of the two countries in November 2016. It is open. It is open. We see, there's lots of collaboration between the institutions, particularly service-related institutions. You'll find that here you have headquarters of companies that have started in Botswana and vice versa.
Okay. About your education system, how many years does a child spend in primary, secondary, and university?
We have 9 years of primary education, 7 years of primary education, and 3 years of junior secondary, and 2 years of senior secondary. Before somebody is ready to go to university, I see it's a similar system to what obtains here in Kenya. Of course, our education system generally in Africa has required a relook to try and transform it in a way that we don't just train numbers of people who know how to read. We upskill the youth so that they are ready to absorb the knowledge that prepares them to be better players. We used to be focused only on reading the best written essay, the best history student, the best social studies education student. But, Africa needs much more than that because we are a very resource-rich country. If we are going to know how to add value to these resources and understand them as our natural capital, for which skills we require to be trained and available internally, we shouldn't just be thinking of. When we talk of investment or direct investment in our economies, we should also be talking about promoting local investment. How do the local players play in that space? So our education system has been relooked to try and transform it in that direction.
Yes. Okay. There was a time when I was reading on the internet that Botswana has had a challenge in HIV and AIDS problem. How has the government addressed that issue?
Yes, it is true that we were almost, like our former president said, we were facing extinction. That was around 1995 up to 98. And that's when we started mounting a very comprehensive anti-HIV and AIDS response program, which focused on the first message of prevention. Prevention, if the message doesn't get through, the attitudes don't change. But when you say, let's prevent, what is next? People will say, yes, we've done everything possible. We're using all protective measures. We are abstaining. We are educating the children. We're involving all communities, including the traditional leaders, the religious leaders, other faith-based organizations, and many other stakeholders. These were involved in what was a total mobilization of the nation to fight the scourge. But at that time, when we started with prevention, already a lot of people were infected. Now, how do you sell the prevention message to people who are already infected. And that's when the next leg, which was treatment, was introduced, thanks to the benevolence of international players, the United Nations AIDS, UNAIDS, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the MAC Foundation, and others. They were confident enough to rely on our national engineered program and say, this is something we can support. So between the government and the international private sector, more than $100 million was put on the table, and other players started coming on board. And that is when the government of Botswana, and thanks to the revenue from diamonds, because they were still selling, we had the infrastructure, we had the facilities, the healthcare facilities were there. It was now a case of how do we treat people that are infected? And it was now introduction of the antiretrovirals. So we introduced a program where the first serious program intervention in the treatment regime was the program called Prevention of Mother-to-Child Transmission. Mothers were pregnant. Do we wait until they bear children that are HIV/AIDS infected? So that's where the drugs were introduced, to be taken by mothers who were infected, but it had to be at a critical stage. So there was an education program again to mobilize these mothers to come for testing, because testing was not easy, because it sort of alienated people at first, because there was this cultural stigma around people with AIDS. But the way that program was so successful, it had about 99.1% penetration. So we could guarantee that all mothers that were registered for prenatal care and were discovered to have HIV and AIDS, if they took these drugs at the right time, the children born, and these now were children born from 2000 onwards, were negative. So we saved a big generation. Then the third element was care, because obviously after the prevention of mother-to-child transmission, it went to the other people who are not necessarily expectant mothers, to say at a very critical time when you know your status, because the prevention message was prevent being infected, but the treatment was know your status so that you can be assisted. So there were certain interventions pointed at people who were not at I can't remember what the name of, but not at a critical stage of the disease where it was hopeless to treat them. So they had to be registered to take antiretroviral drugs. And again, we saved a lot of people from dying. We saved a lot of people from dying, but if they receive these drugs, it doesn't mean they were free from the disease. So it was take the drugs, but behave accordingly so that you can prolong your life. So the lifestyles had to change, your eating habits. So we saw quite a radical change. The numbers of people that were dying started going down. Then it was care. How do we care for those that are now on their deathbeds? That is where the total community mobilization projects, because the facilities, hospital facilities were full. We had to now introduce items like home-based care and many other that ensure that we learned to live with people affected and infected, because we were people infected and affected. So once that became ingrained in the national psyche, you saw a radical change. And thanks to the leadership provided by the third president of the Republic of Botswana, Festus Mogae, who decided to take the leadership from the top and say, if all my ministers, all my MPs, all leaders at every level talk about this openly, it was very difficult to get the chiefs who were very conservative to talk about it. It was very difficult to get the religious leaders who were to talk about sex and prevention. But we got this message, and that is why Botswana turned the corner. To date, any tests, we have something, we have the annual assessments, and they show consistently that if you test 25 youth between 14 and 25, and you find that of 25 of these, maybe 2 are infected, you have really turned the corner. In the past, you will test 25, perhaps 15 will be infected. So these Botswana AIDS Impact Assessment Surveys, which are done annually, are a tell indicator that indeed we turn the corner. But we always want to say it is not defeated. We might have turned the corner, but let us not think AIDS is dead. We might have tamed the tiger, but we have not killed it.
Coming back to you as a High Commissioner, what are the challenges you have encountered being High Commissioner? I don't know whether you have been in the same job in another country, but maybe here in Kenya, what are the challenges that you have?
I tend to welcome challenges because they make us learn. They make us create opportunity. Therefore, each society is different. I've served here as High Commissioner. In other stations where I've served, I was not necessarily the head of mission, but I was sufficiently senior to operate and understand the dynamics. I would want to say any challenges really can be met. Sometimes it's a language thing, but if you listen well, because people from Botswana look like Kenyans, so when people speak to you, they speak to you in Kiswahili. If you are going to consider that as a problem, then that's not good enough. Because as a High Commissioner, as a diplomat is supposed to be a versatile person, an international relations building personality, and therefore you find a different culture, you try and understand it and work with it. So I wouldn't say, if there are any challenges, certainly they are not problems I cannot deal with. Yeah. Likewise, when we served in Europe, and this gentleman over there has also served in Europe, you could say I'm dark African, and this is a Muzungu area, and therefore I'm likely to find myself isolated. But then if you are educated and you can speak the language, and you've been empowered to represent your country, you better go ahead and state your case, interact, socialize, network. So honestly, I don't see any unsurmountable challenges in Kenya. I also cover Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan, Burundi, and Sudan. Each society has its own dynamics, and therefore I see opportunities more than serious challenges that can derail me from my work as a diplomat.
Viewers, thank you very much for being with us in the program, The World. Today, we had John Moretti, High Commissioner Botswana, that has taken us through many things about his country. And until next time, this is Elimu TV. Join us again in the program, The World. Thank you very much.